There are truths so powerful, so unsettling, that once you discover them, they burn through the illusion of ordinary life. If you ever stumble upon this secret, guard it with your life, for revealing it could unravel not only your own world, but the fragile balance of those around you. There is a realm within you that cannot be spoken, only felt, only known in silence. The human psyche is vast, not confined to the small fragments of thought that move across the surface of our consciousness. Beneath the chatter, beneath the stories we tell ourselves and others, there is a depth that defies language. This is where the most sacred truths live, and if you ever reach them, you will understand why they cannot be shared lightly. To try to articulate them is like trying to carry the ocean in your hands. It slips through your fingers and loses its essence. Most people live on the surface of themselves, content with roles, identities, and labels. They walk through life believing that words are the truth, that ideas define reality. But words are only approximations, shadows of something greater. At the unspoken depth of the psyche, there are truths that burn so brightly that language becomes inadequate. If you have ever touched this realm, even for a moment, you know the silence that follows. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of awe, of recognition, of something that transcends explanation. This is why ancient traditions often guarded their mysteries with secrecy. It was not simply to keep power away from the uninitiated, but because they understood the futility of trying to reduce the infinite into human speech. A truth revealed to someone unprepared becomes nothing more than noise. It is misunderstood, mocked, or worse, weaponized. And so, the depth of the psyche demands reverence, not proclamation. It demands that you carry what you find there like a flame cupped in your hands, protecting it from the winds of misunderstanding. Think of the dreams that shake you awake in the middle of the night, leaving you breathless, unable to explain what you just experienced. You try to put it into words, but everything sounds flat, diminished. The language of the psyche is symbolic, imaginal, archetypal. It speaks in images that bypass logic, striking directly into the heart. When you attempt to explain it, you strip it of its potency. You reduce it to rational fragments, and the living truth is lost. This is why the deepest experiences of the psyche often remain locked inside of us, shared only with silence. To encounter the unspoken depth is to face yourself without the masks, without the comforting narratives you usually wear. It is raw, unfiltered, and often terrifying. There you discover the parts of yourself you have denied, the shadows you have suppressed, and the light you have not dared to claim. This confrontation is not something you can tell another person without them experiencing it for themselves. To speak it would be like describing color to someone who has lived in darkness. They may hear the words, but they will not see. The truth must be lived, not explained. This silence is not loneliness. It is a sacred companionship with the self, the deepest aspect of who you are. When you rest there, you realize that much of human conversation is a distraction, an attempt to fill the void that people fear. But in this silence, the void is not frightening. It is fertile. It holds potential, meaning, and transformation. When you carry such a secret within you, you are no longer seduced by the superficial noise of the world. You recognize that what is most real cannot be broadcast, cannot be advertised, cannot be consumed by the masses. It must be cultivated quietly in the inner sanctum of your being. There is also danger in this depth. For those unprepared, it can destabilize the ego, shattering the structures that keep ordinary life intact. This is why the psyche guards its secrets carefully. It will only reveal them when you are ready, when your foundation is strong enough to hold the weight of revelation, and once revealed, you will feel the immense responsibility of carrying it. It is not for display, not for argument, not for convincing others. It is a private contract between you and the truth itself. When you honor this silence, something extraordinary happens. The unspoken depth begins to shape your life in subtle but powerful ways. It influences your choices, your relationships, your sense of meaning. Without ever telling anyone, you carry a radiance that others can sense, though they cannot name. It is as though you have touched something eternal, and now everything temporary is seen differently. You are less concerned with appearances, less bound by fear, more attuned to the mystery that flows through everything. This is the gift of the unspoken depth. It does not need to be told, because it is lived. To know this depth is to understand why some secrets must be taken to the grave, not because they are shameful, but because they are too sacred to be spoken into a world that often does not listen with reverence. Words are too small to carry them, and so you hold them inside, not as a burden, but as a treasure. You become a guardian of silence, and in that silence, you remain in communion with the truth that cannot be named. The unspoken depth of the psyche is where the real work of transformation happens, not in speeches, not in explanations, not in external recognition. It happens in the quiet encounter between you and the mystery of your own soul. If you know this place, you already understand why no one else needs to be told. To speak it is to diminish it, to remain silent is to honor it. And so you carry it, not for others, but for the wholeness of your own being. There is a danger that lurks in the act of speaking too soon, of revealing truths before the soul is ready to bear their weight or before the listener is prepared to receive them. The psyche does not open itself casually. It reveals its mysteries in measured doses, each one arriving at a time when you have enough strength, resilience, and grounding to integrate what is shown. But when revelation is forced, when it comes before the inner soil is ready, what could have been a seed of growth becomes a source of confusion, fear, or even destruction. Premature revelation is like pulling a fruit before it has ripened. What could have nourished becomes bitter and indigestible. Every individual carries within them a rhythm of unfolding, a natural pace at which consciousness expands. This rhythm cannot be rushed without consequence. To unveil a profound truth to someone who has not yet prepared their inner foundation is to place a torch in the hands of a child. The flame that could illuminate their path instead burns them. This is why sacred traditions spoke of initiation, of preparation, of rites that tested one's strength and maturity before deeper truths were unveiled. They understood that premature knowledge is not only useless, it can be harmful. It destabilizes the fragile structures of the ego, leaving a person unmoored and defenseless against forces they do not understand. Think of those moments in your own life when you learned something too soon, when you saw behind a veil before you were ready. Perhaps it was the truth about someone you trusted, or the sudden collapse of a belief you held sacred. In that moment, the ground shifted, and you felt lost, betrayed, unable to make sense of what was happening. That is the essence of premature revelation. It shakes the psyche, not to awaken it, but to fragment it. The individual is left overwhelmed, unable to integrate what they have seen. Instead of liberating them, the truth imprisons them in fear or denial. The psyche guards its depths for this very reason. It does not show everything at once, but only what you can hold at a given stage of your journey. To force the process is to risk breaking the vessel. A powerful truth, if revealed before the ego is ready, can drive a person into denial, repression, or even madness. This is why dreams often cloak their messages in symbols, images that can be approached slowly, deciphered at a pace that the conscious mind can bear. The unconscious does not hurl lightning indiscriminately. It whispers, it tests, it prepares. When we demand more than we are ready for, or when others reveal to us what we have not earned through our own journey, we are left scorched by a light too bright for our eyes. There is also a social danger in revealing truths prematurely. If you speak from the depths of your own experience to those who have not walked the path, your words will not liberate them. They will confuse, offend, or provoke ridicule. What is revelation to you appears as nonsense to another. The danger is not only that they will reject the truth, but that they will reject you for carrying it. You become an outsider, a threat to their carefully maintained illusions. This is why many who have touched deep truths retreat into silence, not because they are afraid, but because they know that to speak is to invite misunderstanding. Premature revelation creates division where there could have been slow awakening. This silence is not suppression, it is wisdom. It recognizes that truth has its own timing, that each soul must discover for itself when it is ready. To reveal prematurely is to rob another of the dignity of their own journey. Just as a child must learn to walk before it can run, so too must the psyche be allowed to grow into its strength before it can carry the burden of deeper knowledge. To hand someone the key to a door they are not yet ready to open is not an act of kindness. It is an act of violence against their natural unfolding. Even within yourself you must be careful of this danger. There are truths you glimpse in moments of deep reflection or mystical experience that you cannot fully integrate right away. They overwhelm you, leaving you unable to function in ordinary life. In such moments, patience is required. You must allow the truth to ripen within you, to settle into the fabric of your being slowly, like a seed germinating beneath the soil. If you grasp it too tightly, if you insist on making sense of it immediately, you distort it. You force meaning where none can yet be articulated, and in doing so, you lose the essence of the revelation. The danger of premature revelation is not only that it can harm you or others, but that it can trivialize the truth itself. A secret spoken too soon loses its sacredness. It becomes just another idea, stripped of its transformative power. Sacred truths demand to be honored, not used as ornaments of knowledge or weapons in debate. They are not meant to elevate the ego, but to dissolve it. When they are revealed prematurely, they are degraded, reduced to mere words in a world already drowning in words. To encounter the truth is to enter into a covenant of silence until the right moment arrives. Silence allows the truth to mature within you, to shape you, to integrate itself into your being until you no longer hold it as information but embody it as transformation. When the time is right, the truth will emerge through your life itself, not through your explanations, but through your presence, your choices, your way of being. And those who are ready will sense it, not because you revealed it prematurely, but because you lived it patiently until it was undeniable. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we try to hide, repress, or deny. It contains everything we find unacceptable, shameful, or frightening, yet it is also the most fertile ground for transformation. To face the shadow is to encounter the truths about ourselves that we would rather look away from. And when we do, something extraordinary begins to happen. The fragments of the self that were cast into darkness start to return, bringing with them energy, vitality, and depth. But this process must unfold in silence, for the shadow does not respond well to public exposure. It requires privacy, reverence, and sacred containment. When you first confront your shadow, there is often a temptation to confess, to spill everything you have discovered, as if telling others will lighten the burden. But this rarely works as intended. Most people are unprepared to hear the raw truths of another's shadow. They project, they judge, or they recoil, not because they are cruel, but because they have not yet faced their own. To reveal the shadow prematurely is to invite misunderstanding and sometimes ridicule. The world is quick to condemn what it cannot understand, and the shadow, by its very nature, defies easy comprehension. Thus, silence becomes not a cage, but a shield, a way to protect both yourself and others from truths they are not ready to bear. The shadow speaks in whispers, in subtle impulses, in dreams that disturb your sleep. It rises in moments of anger, jealousy, or fear, showing you what still lies unresolved within. To hold this quietly, without rushing to justify or explain it, is an act of courage. You are not meant to parade your darkness before the world. You are meant to acknowledge it in the privacy of your own soul, and in that silence, begin the slow work of integration. Like a wounded animal, the shadow retreats when exposed too suddenly. But when approached gently, patiently, and without judgment, it reveals its hidden treasures. For within the shadow lies not only what you fear, but also what you have disowned out of shame or conditioning. Many of your strengths, passions, and gifts are buried there, cast aside because they did not fit the image you wanted to present to the world. To bring them back requires stillness, contemplation, and an inner dialogue that few will understand if you try to explain it. This is why the work of the shadow is often solitary. You descend into yourself, not with the applause of others, but with the silence of one who knows that transformation happens in the dark, away from witnesses. The sacred silence around shadow work is also a safeguard against the ego's need for recognition. If you announce every step of your inner struggle, you risk turning it into a performance, something done for validation rather than for truth. The ego is cunning. It can even use shadow work as a way to feel superior, to appear enlightened, to draw attention. But real integration does not seek attention. It seeks wholeness. Silence strips away the temptation to dramatize, leaving only the quiet, honest encounter with what is. In that silence, the shadow begins to soften, and you discover that what once seemed monstrous is, in fact, a part of yourself longing to be loved. Silence does not mean denial. It does not mean pretending the shadow is not there. On the contrary, it means giving it the space to be seen fully without the distortion of others' reactions. To hold your shadow in silence is to cradle it like something fragile, knowing that it is both dangerous and sacred. It asks to be understood, not broadcast. It asks to be lived through, not explained away. And in this process, something profound occurs. The parts of yourself that you once rejected slowly become integrated into the whole, making you stronger, deeper, and more authentic. Consider how nature handles darkness. The seed grows in silence beneath the soil, hidden from view. The caterpillar transforms within the cocoon, unseen by the world. So too does the shadow transform in the privacy of your inner life. If you were to dig up the seed too soon, or tear open the cocoon before the butterfly was ready, you would destroy what was in the process of becoming. The same is true of the shadow. Silence provides the safe space in which its metamorphosis can occur. What emerges from this process is not shame, but power, not fragmentation, but wholeness. The shadow also holds collective weight. When you touch your own shadow, you brush against the darkness carried by humanity itself. Rage, greed, envy, fear, these are not only yours, they are archetypal forces shared by all. To reveal them carelessly is to trigger others, to mirror back to them what they cannot yet accept in themselves. This is why sacred silence is so necessary. It allows you to process these forces without forcing them upon others. In silence, you carry the responsibility of integrating what belongs not only to you, but to the collective unconscious. This is no small task, and it is not meant for public consumption. It is a private covenant between you and the depths of existence. Over time, as you hold this silence, you begin to radiate something different. Without speaking, people can sense the depth in you. They may not know why, but they feel that you have faced parts of yourself that others avoid. This presence cannot be faked, and it cannot be explained. It comes only from the silent work of encountering and integrating the shadow. You need not reveal the details of what you have seen. The transformation itself becomes visible, more eloquent than words could ever be. Sacred silence in shadow work is therefore not about secrecy born of fear, but secrecy born of reverence. It is the recognition that some truths lose their potency when spoken too soon, that some processes are too delicate for the roughness of casual conversation. To honor the shadow is to honor the mystery of becoming whole, and that mystery demands silence, the kind of silence that protects, nurtures, and allows the darkest parts of you to finally step into the light. There are truths that arrive like lightning, illuminating everything in an instant, but leaving behind a weight that cannot easily be carried. These truths are not the kind we read in books or hear in lectures. They are not the comfortable lessons designed to inspire or motivate. They are revelations that pierce through illusion, exposing the raw structure of reality and the depths of the human soul. To encounter them is to stand before something vast, terrifying, and magnificent. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. They become a burden, a secret knowledge that you must carry, often in silence, because the world is not ready to hear it. This is the weight of forbidden knowledge. What makes knowledge forbidden is not that someone decrees it should not be spoken, but that its very nature resists simplification. It destabilizes the fragile order of ordinary life. Most people cling to illusions not because they are foolish, but because illusions create safety. They provide meaning, identity, and structure. Forbidden knowledge strips those illusions away. It reveals the chaos beneath the order, the shadows behind the masks, the impermanence behind the stability we cling to. Once you see it, you walk differently in the world. You no longer move with the same innocence, because you know too much. Carrying such knowledge is not like holding information. Information can be shared, debated, argued over, but forbidden knowledge is an experience. It lives in your bones, in your dreams, in the silence between your thoughts. To speak it aloud would not transfer it to another. It would only distort it, reducing it to something smaller than it truly is. And yet, keeping it within you often feels unbearable. You feel its weight pressing down, reshaping you in ways that words cannot capture. This is why those who carry such truths often withdraw, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. To live with forbidden knowledge is to live with an inner fire that others cannot see, but that burns constantly within you. There is also isolation in this burden. When you carry forbidden knowledge, you often cannot explain to others why you see the world differently. They may accuse you of being too dark, too cynical, or too detached. But it is not cynicism, it is clarity. You have seen behind the curtain, and what you saw stripped away the comforting illusions that most rely upon. It can be lonely because those around you continue to play roles and believe in structures that you can no longer take seriously. And yet, you must remain silent, because to disrupt their illusions prematurely would serve no purpose but to bring them fear and confusion. Thus, the weight is not only in knowing, but in holding the responsibility of silence. There is a paradox here. Forbidden knowledge both liberates and burdens. It frees you from deception, but it also ties you to a reality that others cannot share. It gives you depth, but it also creates distance. The more deeply you integrate it, the less you need to speak. Instead of explaining, you embody it. Your choices, your presence, your way of seeing the world, all of these become infused with the weight of what you know. In this way, the burden slowly transforms. It is no longer just a secret you carry, but a force that shapes your being from the inside out. Throughout history, those who carried forbidden knowledge often walked a narrow path. Mystics, visionaries, and seekers who glimpsed truths beyond the ordinary often found themselves exiled, condemned, or misunderstood. Their words, when they tried to share them, were twisted, rejected, or turned into dogma. This is the danger of speaking what cannot yet be received. And so, many chose silence, writing in symbols, teaching through metaphor, or retreating into solitude. They knew that forbidden knowledge is not a gift to be handed over, but a challenge each soul must face when it is ready. Within yourself, this weight can feel like both a curse and a calling. At times, you may wish you could go back, that you could unsee what has been revealed. But once the veil has lifted, innocence cannot be restored. The only path forward is integration. You must learn to live with what you know, to let it carve new depths within you without allowing it to crush you. This is not easy work. It requires patience, resilience, and the willingness to carry a burden that few will ever understand. And yet, there is a strange beauty in this burden. For in carrying forbidden knowledge, you become a guardian of truth, not by speaking it, but by living in alignment with it. The weight becomes a discipline, a reminder that life is not what it seems, that beneath the surface of appearances lies a depth most will never touch. This does not make you superior, it makes you responsible. The responsibility is to bear the truth with dignity, to honor it by embodying it, and to resist the temptation to use it for power or recognition. Forbidden knowledge reshapes the way you see everything: love, fear, death, time, meaning. It changes how you relate to others, because you see in them both the illusions they cling to and the deeper essence they have not yet realized. This awareness is not something you can give them, but it softens you, filling you with compassion. You understand why people hold tightly to their illusions. You once held yours just as tightly. The weight you carry teaches you patience, humility, and empathy. Over time, the burden becomes less of a crushing force and more of a grounding presence. It anchors you, reminding you that life is vast, mysterious, and filled with paradoxes that cannot be resolved by simple answers. What once felt unbearable begins to feel sacred. You realize that you were entrusted with this knowledge, not to share it recklessly, but to let it shape you into someone capable of carrying it without being destroyed. The weight becomes part of your strength. This is the path of those who encounter truths too powerful to be spoken. The weight of forbidden knowledge is heavy, but it is also transformative. It sets you apart, yet it brings you closer to the essence of existence. You cannot share it fully, but you can live it. And in living it, you give silent testimony to the reality that lies beyond illusion. There is a depth of truth that words can never reach. Language, no matter how poetic or refined, is always a translation, a reduction of experience into symbols. It points, but it never fully contains. Silence, however, is different. Silence does not point, it holds. It carries the weight of presence, the fullness of meaning without the distortion of expression. In silence, the psyche reveals itself more honestly than in speech. This is why silence often speaks louder than words, why the deepest truths of the soul are not shouted but carried quietly, like a sacred flame that does not need to be displayed to burn brightly. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in language. We learn to name the world, to describe our thoughts, to construct stories about who we are and what life means. But this dependence on words deceives us into thinking that everything essential can be spoken. We forget that before words, there was silence. Before thought, there was pure awareness. This silence is not emptiness, but a fullness beyond expression. When you sit in it, when you surrender the need to speak, you discover a richness that language could never give you. It is in silence that the psyche breathes, heals, and reorders itself. The power of silence lies in its ability to contain contradictions without needing to resolve them. Words demand clarity, coherence, and structure. But the truths of the soul are rarely clear or simple. They are paradoxical, layered, shifting. Silence allows you to hold these paradoxes without forcing them into premature resolution. You do not need to explain them or defend them. You simply let them be. In that letting be, understanding deepens in ways that speech cannot replicate. Silence becomes a vessel for transformation, not because it explains, but because it allows. Consider the moments in life when silence has been more powerful than speech. The quiet presence of someone who listens without interruption. The pause between words that carries more weight than the words themselves. The stillness after a revelation when no one dares to speak. In these moments, silence is not absence. It is presence intensified. It is the psyche acknowledging that what has been touched is too vast to be diminished by explanation. The sacredness of the moment is preserved precisely because nothing is said. Silence is also a shield. When you carry truths that others are not ready to hear, silence protects both you and them. Words can provoke resistance, fear, or denial, but silence allows the truth to remain intact, working quietly within you until the right moment arrives. This is not avoidance, it is wisdom. It recognizes that truth has its own timing and that to speak it too soon is to risk its distortion. In silence, the truth retains its potency, waiting like a seed until the soil is ready. Within yourself, silence is the space where integration happens. When you resist the urge to explain everything, even to yourself, you give your psyche room to process. Insights that seem confusing at first begin to settle. Emotions that feel overwhelming begin to soften. The unconscious, which does not speak in words but in images and symbols, begins to communicate more freely. If you are always speaking, always naming, you drown out this deeper language. But in silence, you learn to listen, not with your ears, but with your whole being. There is a humility in silence that words often lack. Words can be used to impress, to manipulate, to elevate the ego. Silence strips away these temptations. It requires you to sit with what is, without needing to perform or convince. In silence, you face yourself honestly. There is no hiding behind eloquence or cleverness. What remains is the raw encounter with truth. This is why silence can be uncomfortable. It exposes you. But it is precisely in that exposure that healing and growth occur. At the same time, silence can also be an offering. When you sit with another person in silence, you give them space to unfold without pressure. You communicate trust, presence, and respect. Often, what people crave is not advice or explanation, but simply the quiet company of someone who is not afraid to be still. In this way, silence becomes a gift, a form of communication that goes beyond words. It says, "I am here, I see you, I do not need to fill the space with noise." The power of silence extends beyond the personal into the collective. In a world drowning in words, opinions, and endless noise, silence is an act of resistance. It is a refusal to be swept away by distraction. It is a return to the center, to the still point within that is untouched by the chaos outside. In silence, you reclaim your sovereignty. You are no longer defined by the narratives that surround you. You find your ground in something deeper, something unshakable. This is why those who carry great truths often choose silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because they know that words would betray the depth of what they know. Silence preserves the mystery. It allows truth to remain whole, undefiled by the inadequacy of expression. And when they do speak, their words carry the weight of silence within them. Every syllable is infused with depth because it emerges not from a compulsion to speak, but from a place of necessity. Ultimately, silence is not the absence of communication, but the highest form of it. It is the language of the soul, the container of all that cannot be spoken. To embrace silence is to acknowledge that some truths are too sacred for words, that the most profound transformations happen not in explanation, but in quiet presence. Silence does not diminish truth, it amplifies it, grounding it in the mystery from which it came. When you understand this, you no longer fear silence. You welcome it, you honor it, and you let it speak in ways words never could. There is a paradox that rests at the heart of every seeker's journey. The very secret that cannot be spoken, the one that must be guarded in silence, is also the very thing that sets you free. It is not freedom in the way most imagine, not the outer liberty to do as you please or the escape from responsibility. It is an inner liberation, a release from the chains of illusion, fear, and unconsciousness. The secret, whatever form it takes when you encounter it, is the key that unlocks the prison of your own making. But the key works only for you. It is not something that can be handed over or explained. It is lived into, carried within, and integrated slowly until it reshapes the very foundation of your being. When you first glimpse this secret, it does not feel like freedom at all. It feels heavy, unsettling, even dangerous. It disrupts the world you thought you knew. It calls into question your assumptions, your attachments, your identity. At first, It feels like a burden you would rather set down. But as you hold it in silence, as you allow it to do its work within you, it begins to transform. What once felt like a weight becomes a source of strength. The very thing you thought might crush you instead refines you, stripping away falsehood and leaving only what is essential. In time, you come to see that the secret was never meant to imprison you. It was meant to set you free. The freedom it offers is not immediate. It requires patience, endurance, and an acceptance of the inner solitude that accompanies carrying something no one else can fully understand. But this solitude is not loneliness. It is the ground of authenticity. It forces you inward to rely not on external validation, but on the depth of your own inner life. In that reliance, you discover a freedom that is unshakable because it does not depend on circumstances or approval. It rests in the quiet certainty of your own experience. The secret becomes the compass by which you navigate life, a hidden source of guidance that cannot be stolen or corrupted. As you integrate this secret, you begin to see the illusions that once held you captive. The masks you wore to be accepted, the roles you played to feel significant, the fears that dictated your choices, all of these lose their power. You no longer need to cling to them because the truth you carry inside is enough. This is inner freedom, the ability to move through the world without being enslaved by its illusions. You may still participate in the roles and structures of life, but you do so lightly, knowing they are not ultimate. The secret within you anchors you in something deeper. This freedom also changes the way you relate to others. You no longer need to convince, to argue, to prove. You recognize that each person must find their own key, discover their own secret at the pace their soul demands. Instead of trying to impose your truth, you allow them their journey, knowing that real transformation cannot be forced. This patience, this respect for the unfolding of another's path, is itself a mark of freedom. You are no longer bound by the compulsion to control or persuade. You simply embody the truth you have found, and in doing so, you become a quiet invitation for others to seek their own. There is a serenity that comes with this kind of freedom. Life's challenges and uncertainties do not disappear, but they no longer consume you in the same way. You carry within you a hidden foundation that cannot be shaken by external storms. Even in suffering, even in loss, there is a deeper stability that whispers, "This too belongs, this too will transform." The secret does not protect you from pain, but it frees you from despair. You know that what is essential in you cannot be destroyed. That knowledge alone is liberation. Over time, you realize that the secret is not something you possess, it is something that possesses you. It works through you, reshaping your desires, your values, your way of seeing. It is less like an object you hold and more like a fire that burns within you. You cannot always control it, but you can protect it, nurture it, honor it. And as you do, it purifies you. It strips away what is false and leaves behind a self that is truer, freer, more whole. There is also joy hidden within this freedom, not the fleeting joy of pleasure or success, but the quiet joy of knowing you are aligned with something real. You no longer chase endlessly after what the world promises will make you happy, because you have touched a deeper source. You find joy in simplicity, in presence, in the mere act of being alive. The secret frees you from the tyranny of striving. It brings you back to the essence of existence, where joy is not earned but given, not pursued but discovered. And perhaps the greatest freedom of all is the release from fear, especially the fear of death. For the secret, once integrated, reveals that what you truly are cannot be destroyed. You are more than your roles, more than your achievements, more than your failures. You are more even than your body. To carry this knowledge is to be liberated from the deepest bondage of all. Death loses its power to terrify because you know that what is essential continues. In this way, the secret not only frees you to live, but also frees you to die without fear. The secret as a key to inner freedom is not a doctrine, not a formula, not something that can be handed from one person to another. It is the fruit of silence, the treasure hidden in the depths of the psyche, waiting to be uncovered by those who are willing to descend into themselves. If you carry it, you know why it must remain unspoken. Words would only diminish it. Its power lies in being lived, not declared. And as you live it, you discover that freedom was never about escaping life, but about embracing it fully, with the quiet strength of one who knows the truth and needs no one else to confirm it. And so, the path we have walked together leads us here, to the realization that not every truth is meant to be spoken, not every revelation is meant to be shared. Some things are too sacred, too transformative, to be reduced to words or broadcast into a world that is unprepared to hold them. What we carry in silence shapes us more deeply than anything we could declare aloud. It is in this hidden work that the psyche is refined, the soul is strengthened, and true freedom is born. The secret does not need an audience. It needs only your courage to bear it, your patience to integrate it, and your reverence to live it. When you guard it as a treasure rather than a weapon, when you let it illuminate your path without demanding recognition, you step into a kind of freedom the world cannot take from you. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all, that silence itself, when honored, becomes the language of the soul, the vessel of transformation, and the final keeper of the secret.